El Portal, Florida, just north of Miami, is a village with an ancient secret. The narrow streets of this beautiful neighborhood, canopied by centuries-old oaks, culminate at the site of a native Tequesta burial mound. Perched on one of the highest points in South Florida, we are told the name of El Portal exclusively comes to us from Spanish, meaning gate, port, or entrance. With the exception of sailors and seamen, however, when most English speakers hear the word portal, what comes to mind is something more metaphysical, such as a doorway to the underworld, or a stargate, so to speak. Let us here endeavor to show that the names of sacred places are never so one-dimensional, and often hold the keys to the greatest of mysteries. For in this video, we may have uncovered the legitimate portal of El Portal, Florida, an underground cave situated almost directly beneath the sacred mound site. We will discuss the history, artifacts, and, surprisingly, the intercontinental significance of this anomalous site. Most of what you are about to hear comes directly to us from the wonderful man who today owns the very property which the cave is on. So, without further ado, let us now penetrate the ancient mysteries of the Miami area. Now enjoy.
Welcome to Florida, baby.
Introducing Dr. Narco Longo.
On a recent excursion to the Miami area, we visited both the Miami Circle and its unofficial sister site at 444 Brickell. On our way back north, my friend Ezra recommended that we check out a mound in the next neighborhood over, so that's exactly what we did. While the trip had been very exciting thus far, we could not have imagined the surprise that lay ahead of us in the Sherwood Forest of El Portal. While I was filming, a gentleman approached me and asked if I would move my van, which, admittedly, I had rudely parked too close to the mound. After chatting with this man, he revealed himself to be a resident of the neighborhood. Not only does he live in the near vicinity of the mound, but he proved to be a wealth of information and local lore. In addition to sharing his knowledge freely and inviting us into his home, he informed me that he had an additional surprise. So, allow me to introduce Ian of the Sherwood Forest.
What's your name?
My name's Ian, and I've lived here in El Portal for about 10 years. And we are on the Tequesta Native American burial mound. There's a plaque here that, as far as I know, it was the first dedicated historic site in all of Miami-Dade County. I've also heard that this is one of 3 mounds remaining, and there were many, many mounds previously. The mound was apparently 6 to 9 feet taller at one point, from what I hear from the county archaeologists. It was excavated, and the fill was used over at this house to fill in which was a grotto at one point. And this whole area is supposedly rich with Tequesta history, as is right across the river, which is kind of just behind, or in front of me behind you right now. So the area naturally is called a hammock, which means it's a high elevation. There are many oak trees here, and there's Spanish moss, which was apparently brought from northern tribes and traded because it was a commodity for the Tequesta. It's not native to this area apparently. And this area, which is about 2 blocks big, which is called Sherwood Forest of El Portal now, was that hammock area that Tequesta were really interested in. It sits on the Little River, which is the second largest river in Miami-Dade County. The Miami River is the main river, and there's a large circle there, which is pretty well known for a lot of Tequesta history, and there's a lot of excavation going on right now in the downtown Brickell area that's related to that.
Yeah, we were just over there.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat spot.
We just got some good stuff over there.
So this area has been more preserved than Brickell. From what I understand, if we were to just go down a few inches here, we would find human remains. The county archaeologist, because it was so much taller at one point. So the county archaeologists actually did an official excavation, and I think that they came in and they did like one scoop and they found bones, and they're like, okay, that's pretty much it, enough. I've also heard that there have been a lot of other artifacts found around the area. On my property, there was supposedly a ceremonial dolphin skull that was found at the base of an oak tree. And then there's many different awls and different tools. I actually have a couple of them that were passed to me by one of the older neighbors that passed away. So these are supposedly hand tools or awls that were from the Tequesta. So items like this turn up when people have septic tank issues or gardening excavations or whatever they may be. So some of the older neighbors that have been here for 30, 40 years have collected things, and then they've kind of been passed along to the newer generation. So the mound now is regularly visited by other native tribes from all around the world. So there's been a lot of South American, there have been a lot of North American tribes.
And what do you think the reason for that is? Just
I've heard that it's part of some sort of a
like
grid,
solidarity or?
some sort of a ley line grid
Okay.
connects it, is what I've heard.
And that's the better answer.
Yeah, so I can't attest to it, but I can say that there's a lot of energy here, and it seems to be like a vortex.
Yes.
And
Perhaps a portal,
yeah, El Portal,
perhaps.
exactly.
It is interesting to note that El Portal, Florida, is situated directly above Little Haiti. As discussed previously on this channel, there is a considerable connection between the words Haiti and Hades. If this portal is next to Haiti, we could interpret this as a portal to Hades, or a quote-unquote doorway to the underworld.
So I've come home, and there's been Quechua from Peru, from the like near Machu Picchu, literally standing around in their full regalia, and
So this place is on their radar.
it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
The following images are credited to Andis Collins and can be found on ancientworldblog.blogspot.com. The Miami Circle in Florida marks southern hemisphere stars and the perihelion passage of Halley's Comet in Lupus on the celestial meridian in 1131 BC, near equinox day. The sky horizon, as pictured, can only have been viewed at or near Nazca, Peru. a link which should not exist in the eyes of mainstream academia, despite there being a Miami in Peru, Indiana. In 1131 BC, Halley's Comet was visible at the position of the largest hole on the Miami Circle. The comet's tail, we think, is shown above it. A faint line is also drawn on the Miami Circle, here in blue, which represents the celestial meridian in 1131 BC, extending from Alpha Librae through Halley and Triangulum Australis to the south celestial pole, not drawn here, as it was surely on the damaged part of the circle.
It is.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Miami tends to draw interesting people like that from all over the world, and they seem to find their way here. So, a little bit of back history from the Tequesta that were here apparently thousands of years. The Spanish came, well, basically when the Spanish settled in St. Augustine, which is the oldest U.S. city that we have existing. This was mid-1500s. Supposedly, this area here was also settled within 2 years of that. So there was a boat full of French Huguenots, and two Spanish missions. And they settled here, and the descriptions of what was found in Spain matches basically the property right in this area. So they set up a mission that was called St. Anne, and it lasted apparently 2 years, but there was some sort of an issue where the brother of the chief was killed or something like that. I don't know the whole story, but basically the mission did not work out here. It was moved further south for a little while. And then there's, I think, a break in history, but basically more Europeans came over throughout the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. And by the 1700s, the Tequesta were pretty much wiped out. They had either been sent to Cuba or had died from disease or were killed. So they pretty much haven't been here since late 1700s, from what I can hear. Later on, this hammock area was, I believe it was gifted to a Civil War general for his proceeds of winning in the war, which was later sold to Juliet Tuttle, who later sold it to someone by the name of McVeigh, who was a Florida East Coast Railway engineer. And you can hear the train tracks, which are right here. So apparently he retired and he bought this whole area. And he lived here from 1899 through 1923 when he passed away. And he preserved it. And when he passed away, actually he called it Gardenville. And so when he passed away, his family sold Gardenville to the D.C. Clark Company. And they, in the middle of the boom of the 90s, developed it into what it is now, which is Sherwood Forest, which is kind of the theme from England and Sherwood Forest, and they did all the plots, and there are still some of the original infrastructure pieces, like this over here. You can see an old lamp, and down here there's one of the spec houses. I don't know if you can see the main street lamp right there.
Yep.
And if we walk up, I can show you one of the original flyers. So this is from the Kentucky State Fair from 1924, and this was the original advertisement for the area.
Wow.
I'll get a nice picture up on there that I can
Yeah.
throw up.
So, in the boom of the 20s development, there was a massive hurricane that came through, and it just wiped out all of the development and what was going on. So, this development basically fell into that calamity, and also the Great Depression happened a couple of years later. So, there's pretty much not much happening in this area from the 20s until the mid-30s, which is when a lot of the houses started to be built, which was mid-30s. The house that I live in is 1935. And then, you know, through the world wars and on into modern times, and here we are today. So this is what's known as the Tequesta Cave. Not sure if it is actually Tequesta. This is an oolite natural structure. The best information I've been able to find is that around the turn of the century, a little girl came here who later wrote a book that says she remembers there being a carved out kind of like a Bahamian oven. So probably this area here that was maybe an area where cooking could have happened, and kind of the heat was encapsulated within. And then she later came back in the 30s or the 40s and clearly remembers the cave being here, which is about a 10 by 10 room. Some of the older residents have heard stories that they believe it may have been used during Prohibition, because we're right here on the river, and maybe liquor and things were smuggled up here. The spec house here in the neighborhood, that's a few houses down, I was told it was owned by Al Capone, and his mistress lived there. So I don't know if that has any connection or not, but just one of the things that I've heard in kind of the urban lore. So this is all natural oolite. It looks like it has been hand carved, and on the side here there are steps that go down. So I'm not sure if the steps were part of the mission that was here in the 1500s, or if this was later added maybe as some sort of a cellar or something. There was a kunti farm here. Kunti is a native plant which the Tequesta used, and they washed here to get the toxins out, and they made a flour out of it. And later on, turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s, I believe that there was an actual kunti farm production kind of facility, which was located a couple houses down. So we can take a look inside.
What do you guys tend to do in here?
Meditate, we play music sometimes, share with other natives that come around.
Nice.
Occasionally spend the night.
Wow. Yeah? You sleep in here?
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's nice and cool.
Yeah, this is insane. Anything else? else about the cave, or does it go down any deeper? Does it bottom out, or what was the ground like when you came in? It was like loose pebbles?
It's, no, I put the pebbles, but it's, I mean, if you just move them to the side, you can see it's basically just...
More limestone?
Yeah, just a lot more limestone.
Wow.
I think the entire area is limestone.
Yeah.
So this oak tree is 17 foot in circumference. I was told that the Smithsonian did a core sample in the 70s, and they said it was somewhere around 500 to 600 years old, before my time, obviously. I was also told that there was a ceremonial dolphin skull that was found at the base of it.
Quote, additional items that may have been placed in or buried under the structure were a complete 5-foot long shark skeleton, aligned east to west, a dolphin skull, and a complete carapace of a sea turtle. 4 human teeth were also found. End quote.
And there have been many interesting people over the years that have come to the property and believe that the tree speaks to them and that can speak through them. So there's definitely something here.
How old, just to reiterate, how old?
Probably 500 to 600 years, so would have definitely been here when the Tequesta were here.
Yeah.
So something that I find interesting, and maybe this is just me drawing connections where no valid connections are, but St. Augustine has the Fountain of Youth, and for whatever reason it seems like that was something that was being sought at the time. So this site here is kind of, I don't want to say the sister site to that, but within 2 years this was another location that was founded by the Spanish, and a mission was set up here. So very similar to St. Augustine. There's also right here where there's a tuft of bamboo, a freshwater spring, and the freshwater spring was very plentiful apparently. Actually the house that's here was built to house equipment that pumped water from the spring to all of the other homes in the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods until municipal water was brought in. So I don't know, another interesting location where a possible Fountain of Youth, whatever that may be, could have been. So I don't know, I just thought that was pretty cool. When the Tequesta were here, supposedly the landscape was different in the sense that the Everglades was only like a block away, which now it's, I don't know, many miles because of development. So there would have been water kind of flowing all around here, and there would have been fresh water kind of popping up in grottos, and in the river there's actually pictures on the development Sherwood Forest advertisement that show where rowboats were actually lifted up because of the bubbling freshwater springs were so powerful, almost like up in kind of North Florida area, like the Ocala area. So there were 3 of them in the river right here, and then 1 here on the land,
Fresh
and then
springs
fresh
oozing into the river.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, fresh water coming up. So, yeah.
Wow.
So this is the Little River, which is the 2nd largest river in Miami. And I was told that the Tequesta women and children were primarily on the south side here, and then the males were on the north side here.
Really?
I'm not sure the reason for that, but that was something that I was told by some archaeologists, I believe, at one point. So right out here in the river is where the springs would have been. And after a large hurricane in the 20s, the Army Corps of Engineers decided to create a canal system which connected into this. So it kind of culminated here and then branched off. So if you look at aerial photography from the 20s before the Army Corps of Engineers connected it in, it was basically ended right around this area, and then it was basically runoff from the Everglades that came into it. But now this goes all the way back into, I don't know, miles and miles of canal systems. And if you go this way, it's just a short paddle to get out to the intercoastal.
Oh, yeah? What type of animals do you get back here?
Well, this area right here is actually a safe haven for manatee, so mothers and calves come in a lot. I'm not sure if they give birth here or not, but you often see manatees with calves. And of course, plenty of invasive iguanas, many species of fish. El Portal is a bird sanctuary, so tons and tons of birds. Raccoons, possums.
Any dolphins?
Haven't seen any dolphins.
Any sharks?
No, not that they couldn't be, but haven't seen them.
Gators?
Saw one once after a hurricane.
Might have been a crocodile.
Could have been. Yeah. I didn't personally see it. A friend of mine saw it.